Hi everyone! So this past weekend, I took my 10-year-old to see Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. This is the first PG-13 movie I've taken him to, and I wasn't sure if it would be appropriate for him or not. So in case you're in that same spot, I did the work for you. In this review, you'll get my take, as well as my kids' take, to decide if it's okay to bring your kids along to see Dungeons & Dragons. I'll tell you about the profanity, sex, violence, as well as how annoyed you might be having to sit through the movie. I'll do my best not to give away any spoilers so I don't ruin anything about your movie experience. Before I start, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. As you probably know, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a brand new movie based on the popular tabletop role-playing game. It stars Hugh Grant, Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, and Regé-Jean Page. To start the ratings, we'll look at the cost factor first. This movie's currently only in theaters. I was surprised to see that a movie ticket in my area is only $8, so that's a plus. But there were snacks and drinks and all that, of course, too. Yes, it's more expensive than watching a show on Netflix, but I thought it was worth it. I'll set this between a low and a medium. Next, we can talk about sex. As a PG-13 movie, they could have had some risque scenes if they wanted, but there was nothing at all. No kissing, no nudity, very little innuendo. Now, seeing Regé-Jean Page on screen did bring back some good Bridgerton memories, if you know what I mean. But as far as this movie goes, this gets a 0. The next category is profanity. There are some curse words here. I didn't count them like I've seen done for some other shows and movies, but if I had to ballpark it, I'd say it was less than 10 total and no F words. To me, this earns it a low rating. Now we can talk about violence. This is obviously why the movie would get a PG-13 rating instead of PG. There definitely is a lot of fighting, mostly sword fighting as well as some hand-to-hand combat. In one particular scene, one character beats another until that character is well beyond dead, but it's done at a distance so you don't see anything graphic. As I watched the movie, I was specifically looking for blood, and for the amount of fighting there is, much of it is bloodless. I think it's because a lot of the characters are wearing armor, so even if they were wounded or killed, there's no visible blood. There is a large bloody hand at one point, but that was the bloodiest thing I saw. For the most part, while there is a lot of fighting and killing, it isn't done in a gory way. Apart from the specific violence, there are also things that are scary or gross. There is one significant jump scare. I won't say where it is to ruin it, but my son said that was the one thing in the movie that he thought was scary. There are also some frightening looking villains and dragons, and one gross scene where people are basically foaming at the mouth. And last, there are a couple scenes that are quite sad for sensitive viewers. I asked my son to rate the violence, and he said it should go all the way up. I think that's a bit extreme. I was actually going to say medium, so we'll compromise and say between medium and high. The last rating is how annoyed you'll be while watching this movie. This was an interesting one. I didn't mind this movie. It wasn't the best thing I've ever seen, but I wasn't looking at my watch waiting for it to be over. But I have to admit, I'm not a D&D player. Growing up in the 80s, most girls didn't get to play. My husband, on the other hand, did play. He came along with us to the movie, so I asked him how he liked it and how it did as a representation of the game. Well, he literally said it was one of the worst movies he's ever seen. He said it didn't relate to the game at all. So if you're a player and you're looking to see your tabletop game fantasies come to life, you will probably be annoyed by this film. So taking his advice into account, I'm going to set the annoying rating to a medium. So that's the scoop. As you can see, violence really is the only issue you might be concerned with, including that one jump scare. All in all, it was not wildly inappropriate. Was it a great movie? No, not really. For one thing, I was very aware that I was watching Hugh Grant. He didn't seem to fit that role at all, in my opinion. There were some funny parts, but other jokes were pretty cheesy. But what matters is I didn't feel like it was a bad decision to let my 10-year-old watch this movie. My almost 8-year-old stayed home, and I think that was the right call as well. She gets scared much more easily, plus I think she wouldn't have liked the storyline much. So taking those ages into account, I'd say this movie is probably okay for age 10 and up. In addition to the violence, I feel like the pacing is different than in a typical kids' PG movie. There were some convoluted storylines, lots of characters, and detailed backstories that probably just wouldn't be terribly interesting for a kid much younger than 10. So if you want to bring your kid to this movie, I say go for it. But if you're bringing your kid in the hopes that this is the gateway to get him into playing D&D with you, that may not happen since this movie isn't really tied very strongly to the game. Well, I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you agree or disagree and what you thought of the movie. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to see what other movies, shows, and games are okay for your kids. See you next time.